Hey guys, Ryan Ament from Chasing Happiness Podcast. I hope you guys are having a great day. Today on the podcast, we have Philip Pape. He's the founder of Wits Weights, a top 25 nutrition podcast, certified nutrition coach, physique engineer. We're going to have to ask about that. Evidence based nutrition, achieve a more defined, muscular, leaner physique, and break through plateaus to look like you lift without wasting time. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate being here.
You're more than welcome. So I think we have a lot to talk about here, and it's good stuff. I love nutrition, and I'm always looking for ways to fuel the body and so forth. But before we go there, a little about yourself and who you are, and then we'll get into some rabbit holes.
Yeah, sure. Like you said, I'm a certified nutrition coach, physique engineer. We can get into that. My background was in engineering, so I still have that engineering mindset of how do we use systems to improve things, and I think we can do the same with our bodies. So mostly, I help people who are already lifting weights or trying to work on their fitness, who just have struggled with plateaus or they struggle to get the results they want despite working hard and despite being successful in other parts of their life, their career, family, and so on, which many of us can relate to, and I help them get over that hump. Usually it's a nutrition thing that we have to work on, but there's also elements of strength training that I help clients with too. So the reason I got into all of this is I struggled with those things for years. I struggled with the diets. I tried all the diets, the restrictive diets, intermittent fasting. I did CrossFit for 8 years, did all the strength programs. And it wasn't until about 4 years ago, as I was turning 40, that things started to finally click when I learned about evidence based fitness and strength and nutrition and all that. And we can go into all that rabbit hole if we want. But when I finally realized that I could do things in a way that was sustainable, it didn't require sacrifice and restriction, that I could do for the rest of my life, I was excited about it. Right. So I started my podcast, Wits and Weights, in 2021 to get the word out and teach people about it. That was my only goal. And then as people, it resonated with folks, oh, the fitness industry is giving me one message and I'm hearing something else. And you explain why this works physiologically with the body and mentally. I get it. And by the way, do you coach people? So I started getting those kind of inquiries and decided, let me give it a shot. Let me jump into the world of coaching. And long story short, here we are today.
So fitness, nutrition, everything it's a journey, and I know we all go on and we all struggle with it. First, let's just dive right into it and go right down the rabbit hole. What is it always been a lifelong journey for you with nutrition? Or did it, I know you said a few years ago it came into play, but where did that first initial journey struggle start?
Sure. I would say it started from the time I was a kid, where I grew up in a family that had the typical American diet. I was extremely picky, didn't really learn to eat right, and was very early on exposed to diets, right? Everything from my mom doing Weight Watchers to Atkins and Slim Fast back in the day. And then later on, keto. And I mentioned intermittent fasting and all of those. And the idea was always, I'm not happy with my body. I'm overweight. It's probably my genetics. I can't do much about it. But oh, this diet promises a quick answer over the next few months. And all I had to do is follow these simple rules and eat this and not that. And it was always about eating this and not that. But even though I got limited success doing that, and I could argue the word success and what it even means, because I don't think I did, it never stuck. It never stuck. And so it was a roller coaster throughout my 20s and 30s. When I was turning 30, I joined CrossFit. So I did get into fitness more than I had before. Before I had gone to the gym just randomly, tried to use machines, didn't know what I was doing, never touched a barbell. Barbells weren't even a thing for most people in the US until CrossFit came around. And so around 2010, I joined the craze, right? I went to CrossFit, the group classes. I loved the experience. I loved the getting the heart rate up and doing the group accountability. I loved touching the barbell, learning how to squat and deadlift and all these things. But there's a lot about it that is lacking in terms of consistency and sustainability and building muscle. And I never learned all of that. So here I am sweating my butt off for years, not understanding nutrition and pretty much looking how I always looked and getting worse and worse, getting that dad bod that didn't want it to avoid over time. So I think that was your question, that when I
Yeah.
really got into it, I've always tried it. And it wasn't until recently that I like figured it out, so to speak.
So let's dive into that rabbit hole. So you figure it out. Where do we start? We're on this journey. Where do we really begin in how to figure out to work with our body, body composition And
Yep.
then how do we fuel it? And then how do we exercise?
I think it starts with the mind and understanding that number one, we can't be perfect and we shouldn't be perfect. Number
Mhm.
two, um, when it comes to food, we want to be satisfied. We want to eat things that don't make us hungry. We want to eat things that satisfy us, and we want to be able to enjoy ourselves. Unfortunately, the rigid dieting mentality is the opposite. It's don't eat carbs, or don't eat this, or don't eat that. And as soon as you want to eat one of those things and choose to do that, all of a sudden it's a moral failing. You judge yourself as a failure, and then you get on all of these all or nothing roller coasters. So we want a flexible, sustainable approach to nutrition. What that looks like is aligning what you eat with your goals. And so rather than think of it in terms of losing weight, we think of it in terms of what is your identity and what do you want to be? And for my clients and me, that's thinking like an athlete. No matter what age you are, even if you're 70 and listening to this and never touched a barbell, thinking like an athlete. What would an athlete do? An athlete would train. An athlete would want to perform. An athlete would need to have longevity for their health. And being strong and then fueling that performance and thinking in terms of having energy as opposed to restricting is a principle based way to do this. So that's high level, Ryan. We can get into the nitty gritty. Okay, we need protein and fiber and all of these other things, but it's getting off of diets, getting away from diets.
So you would get away from diets because it starts with DIE, die. We all know that, the old adage. But could you give a sample or an example of what somebody maybe you're working with at your
Sure.
nutrition and maybe their or their exercise routine?
Sure, absolutely. So if somebody comes to work with me, first off, I've got to understand everything about them in terms of their lifestyle, the preferences, their tolerances, and their food preferences, and what their training history is. And from a food perspective, my clients all track because I'm putting on the physique engineer hat. I'm a big fan of using data and feedback to create awareness, not to berate yourself or tell you that you're adhering or compliant or perfect or not, but really to say, here's where I want to be, here's where I am and let's close the gap and let's keep closing that gap. So for food, we're going to track macros, we're going to track calories, we're going to track fiber, and we're going to aim to improve our body composition without going into a diet. So that is strength training, usually with barbells, but not always. We can get into those specifics. I like to be efficient with my time, and most of my clients are super busy. They might be busy moms, entrepreneurs, working professionals, and they don't want to be going to the gym 6 days a week for an hour and a half, right? They also probably don't want to run on a treadmill all the time. And so,
No.
what if you could work out 3 days a week for 30 minutes and do three movements with barbells? To me, that's an extremely efficient way to do it. It's almost the lazy person's approach to strength training and you start to get this muscle building signal and then you fuel it with protein and calories and carbs. Nothing's off limits, right? 10-20% of your diet is whatever you want and the rest is mostly whole nutrient dense foods. And after about say 6 to 10 weeks of that, we really understand your body and how it responds. We've recovered your metabolism. We've maximized your energy through proper movement, walking, training. And then we can say, okay, now you want to lose 20 pounds of fat we can do that now in a very efficient, effective way that doesn't feel like suffering like you've had in the past.
I've heard all the stories about losing how to lose fat. So can we get into that rabbit hole and drop and really go down into that? Because I'm sure people are going to want to hear how do I lose fat?
For sure. I recently did an episode actually called fat loss versus weight loss because the term weight loss makes me cringe a little bit because it's what the whole fitness industry is built on of losing weight, quick fix, short term. Um, Most people, when they crash diet, when they just cut a bunch of calories and they're not strength training and they're not eating enough protein or fiber, they're actually losing fat and muscle, right? Almost inevitably, you're losing anywhere from 25 to as much as 50% of that weight that you lose is muscle. And so as people get older and they're not as active and they're not quite eating the way they should be, even if you do diets over and over again and continue to hit that weight target you want to be at, you're a more skinny fat version of yourself. You're just higher and higher body fat, less and less muscle over time until unfortunately it catches up to you in your 60s, 70s, and 80s with frailty, potential for injury, with going on medications, all the things that we know about metabolic disease. But instead, we can counteract that by strength training. So, two things are the most important when you're losing weight strength training in a way that your body wants to build muscle and keeping your protein high. Like those, if nothing else, those two are going to go a long way. Right now, I'm doing a challenge in my community. It's a rapid fat loss challenge, which is not for everybody. So if you're listening to this, you're like, I want to do that. It's for people who've already been training and tracking and have a foundation built up. But the idea is to lose more quickly than the average. And so what we emphasize is training really heavy in the gym or really hard in the gym and keeping the protein really high. And when you're on very low calories, that means it's mostly protein. I'm going off on a tangent there, but that's like the extreme where the idea is, okay, if in 2 weeks you lose 7 pounds of weight, 7 pounds of that is fat. And if you do the numbers and body composition, that means you're leaner. Now, the average person starting with me, we don't even do fat loss. We keep the calories right at your maintenance. And guess what happens? You lose fat anyway. You end up building muscle and losing fat at the same time. And that's a beautiful thing because then I'll have clients say, well, scale didn't go down, but I'm feeling better in my clothes. I'm filling out my shirt sleeves. My muscles are getting bigger. I have more energy. I can sleep more on and on. My hormones have improved. It's one of the most important things, right?
So what about all those diets that are out there? And I know we don't want to talk about them, but we need to bring them up. The keto diet or
Mhm.
plant-based diet, or I don't know all of them. It's just, it's crazy. Where, how do we really tune out the noise and really get focused in on eating? I don't want to say properly, but I guess to your body composition. Am I right or wrong there? Tailoring your eating habits that way and then being able to stick to it, because that's the biggest problem is people lose motivation when they can't eat the things they want. So how do we fit into that with all the fads out there and be able to lose weight, gain muscle, and get rid of that fat around the belly?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the sustainability of a flexible diet versus the rigidity of a named diet. So going back to what I said earlier, a named diet tells you what to do. A flexible diet, you tell you what to do based on how it aligns with your goals. If we want to get down to specific numbers, I can definitely give you, for example, you're trying to maintain your weight, you have to know how many calories you burn every day to maintain your weight. So you would want to track food for, say, 3 weeks. There's an app that my clients use that does that more accurately. But even if you just tracked in any old app and tried to eat consistently, let's say you eat 2,500 calories a day, and for 3 weeks you've maintained your weight. Well, that's roughly how much you burn. Knowing that, the caveat is your metabolism changes daily. It can go up, it can go down with what you're doing, and so on. Once you know that number, the question is, how do you eat? And so protein is going to be the most important macronutrient here. And I'm going to ask you to aim for around zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of your body weight. So
Okay.
let's say you weigh 180 pounds. You're aiming for at least, say, 140 up to 180 grams per protein. And I would say before you do any other changes to your diet, address that because that is always an issue for people. Most people are under eating by half or more. So if you start tracking, you'll know how much you eat. If you have this number I just told you, you know what a reasonable target is. Now you can start making choices. How do I do that? Okay, I may need to plan out my meals. I may need to get protein 4 or 5 times a day. Where do I get protein from? Okay, now you get educated about protein sources, lean meats and dairy, eggs, and plant sources of protein. So it cascades into you become more educated, Ryan, when you go through this process. But instead of thinking of I can't eat carbs, you think, huh, I want to build muscle. I want to lose fat. I want to get enough protein and fiber. Okay, fiber is in whole grains and vegetables and fruits. And it starts to add in things to your diet that crowd other things out. So this is like a positive additive approach rather than a cutting out approach.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a better approach because now you're being rewarded. When you're
Yes.
looking for those proteins, are you focused on a specific, I don't know, sector of it? So is it red meat? Is it turkey? Is it chicken? Is it fish? Is it a combination? What does that look like when people are wanting or they're needing to consume protein?
What are your favorite two meats, Ryan?
Oh, I eat red meat all day.
Okay. Then red meat's going to be top of the list for you.
Yeah.
That answer your question? No. So not to be flippant, but
No,
it
no, no.
really is what you like.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
little different, I think, because 'cause I've learned over the years. Because I've never dieted, but I also don't want to exclude things out of my diet, but one of the biggest things that I've learned over time is what the establishment tells us, like you've spoken about, is typically the opposite, and since if you wanna call it a diet, I don't call people call it is they call it a carnivore diet, but I'm not carnivore. I eat red meat, I eat vegetables, I eat fruit, I eat fiber. I have a little bit of different of a composition, but I've always exercised and been able to keep my weight to where I feel comfortable. And I think at this point, I'm going to turn 50 next year. I think I need to step it up another level, but I fight the running bug. My prior life I was in law enforcement and we had to run all the
Mm.
time. Oh god, you can't get me on a treadmill today, or run if my life depended on it. Get me on a bike, get me on anything else. I've really started liking to walk in the morning. I get up at 4 o'clock. I take my dog out and we walk almost 4 miles in the
Yeah.
morning just to start everything going. But my biggest thing is push-ups, sit-ups. I use kettlebells in my house. But my biggest thing is I still want to enjoy things. I'm gonna have something that's gonna be sweet every so often. It's just life. It's who I am. I'm not perfect, but I do know the things I can eat consistently and they don't bother me. And grass-fed, grass-finished beef is my thing. And I found a producer out here in Arizona that I can go to the farm. Literally, they've got the animals there, and it goes from the animal to my table, and it's
Oh, I
clean.
wish I
So
had
I
that
mean,
here. Yeah. Yeah, everything you're saying, you've got so many positive attributes you've developed that are exactly what we're talking about, which is eating things you love. It has to be enjoyable. You want it to be sustainable and
yes,
also include indulgences. What it's not licensed to do is just eat eat all the indulgences all the time, thinking that's going to be okay because I said
yeah,
it needs to be flexible. Because if you eat pizza all day every day, it might satisfy your protein and macro goals. Probably not because you can't have much protein that way. But let's say it did, you're not gonna have great digestion. You're not gonna
no,
feel full. You're gonna either want to overconsume or you're just gonna feel like you're starving yourself. So once you account for those digestion, your biofeedback, your performance, then you say, ah, okay, now I see. I'm choosing it again, like you said, to reward yourself, to contribute to help your goals with being an athlete. The other thing you mentioned was the movement, the walking. I mean,
yeah,
if you don't like running, don't run. I don't run anymore. If somebody forces you to do something, man,
yeah,
we rebel. That's what we do as
yes,
humans. And actually, most of my clients are doing too much. If that surprises people, especially female clients coming in doing Peloton and uh, they're Peloton hiking, they're running, they're doing yoga, they're doing Pilates. And we say, why don't we just cut as much of that out? Unless you really love it, don't do it. Walk, right? Find times to
yep,
walk. It's great for your blood sugar. It's great for digestion and it burns plenty of calories too. And because of your mind. And then we're
yes.
going to strength train. We're gonna lift barbells, dumbbells, whatever you have 3, 4 days a week. And you're going to get massive results that way.
Yeah, the walking piece, since this has only probably been in February, it'll be a year that I've really every single day, 7 days a week, we do this. It's changed my mindset because I get to go out, clear my mind, and just set the day, but also allows me to be creative during that time and just have thoughts and ideas that come to me. But they say it helps with depression. I'm not depressed. I don't know that, but I seem to be in a better mood during the day when I get a walk in. If I forget to do it or I do it later in the day, it throws my day off.
Yeah, I actually can relate to that just this week because I mentioned that fat loss phase. I'm doing it with my group together. Like I'm doing it myself and I'm in week 2 of 2 weeks. It's just 2 weeks long, but I'm starting to feel a slight energy drain. And it was yesterday or 2 days ago. I almost felt apathetic in the morning. That's very rare for me.
Yeah.
I love just doing stuff all day and I'm very positive. And I felt a little bit like not doing stuff, which is unusual. And I went for a walk and the rest of my day changed for the better. And you're right, there is science behind that, behind like endorphins and other release of signals
Mhm.
in the brain that associate exercise with your positivity and your mood.
I read somewhere, and I've been trying to keep up with some scientific stuff when it comes to exercise, but the number of steps that we take in the day correlates to health benefits. And they're saying, excuse me, they're saying the average American, I think, only takes 4,500 steps a day or something like that. Once you start getting north of 12,000 steps a day, it starts helping with blood pressure, blood sugar, circulatory issues, mindset. I mean, there's just so many things. But when you think about it, to get to like 12,000 steps or more, I think you're close to an hour of walking or something to that
Yeah,
extent,
it's
if
6
I'm
miles
right.
of walking for the
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
a lot of people don't budget that. How do we get there? How do we overcome that obstacle? Because walking's not very hard and it's great for you.
yeah, I had a client who's 50 or he was turning 50, had been strength training for 20 years, super strong, a lot of muscle mass. He was struggling with his diet. In fact, he had been doing a carnivore diet. And so we started to clean all that up. But in the first 2 weeks, one of the simple habits we introduced was walking more.
Mhm.
He is a lawyer, so he sat down all day, like 3,000 steps a day. And again,
Wow.
big, strong guy. He can lift a lot of weights. Like you would think he's quote unquote healthy. He, within 2 weeks, his resting heart rate dropped by 20 beats a minute just from going from
Wow.
3,000 steps to like 8,000. It wasn't even 12. I think the magic number is like 7,500, according to the research in that ballpark. And 8,000 steps, if you just go for a walk or two, pace a little bit, you can get there. Like most people can get there. As far as how, like that's the magic question of all this stuff. How do people do it? Again, if you're not working with a coach or have that external motivation, I would still seek out podcasts like yours. I would seek out communities to join to get that accountability. Because once you can take a step or two in the direction with the tiny habits approach or the James Clear atomic habits and get some result out of it, that motivates you to keep going. And that's why I like data as well. So if you're using a step count and then your resting heart rate, use those to tell how you're doing. Like how many steps you get now? What is your resting heart rate? Increase your step count by 2,000 a day for the next 2 weeks. See how those two numbers change. Or you'll know how the first number changed because it's your step count. But see how your resting heart rate goes down.
Now that you say that, I have it on my watch, but I've not paid attention. I need to go back and look at my history to see what my resting heart rate
Yeah.
was before, because right now, my sitting here, I'm at 64 beats. I don't know what it was before, but I'd be curious to see that. And you said 7,500 is where that data point says
Yeah.
where you'll start seeing that. Wow, I didn't know
Yeah.
it'd be that. That's
Yes.
interesting.
It's associated with all cause mortality. So they see a huge increase in all cause mortality below that number. And some theories are it's not just the walking, it's the fact that you're not sitting. Like we have to understand both sides are important. The fact that you're not just sitting all day, which by the way has other problems for like your back, your low back.
It
Just
does.
move. You find like people who have hip issues, back issues, whatever. They start deadlifting and they start walking more, and all of a sudden the pain goes away. It's crazy.
I've heard that, and thank God I don't have back pain or hip pain, but I've read a lot about that and heard about it. The more walking you do, the better it is for your back and your hip. And I'm like, for the back, I understand that, but for your hip, if you're walking, wouldn't that be grinding on your hip to be causing more issues?
Our bodies are made to walk long distances. So
Yeah,
I think it's
that's
because
true.
you're using the tissue and you're lubricating it, and now your body is adapting to that mode. Whereas if you sit, it just starts to atrophy and become weak.
Yeah. Who was it? Ah, man, I can't remember. I think he talks about the Hadassah that's in Africa,
The Hadzatons.
and yeah, and they talk about their average step count is close to 22,000 a day.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's Anyhow, modern technology has slowed us down. So when we're in this phase and we wanna really start, here's the other thing, let's back up and then we'll land this. People struggle, I know this because 'cause I've struggled with it, is finding a tribe or a community. Where can we start for a community for our health, or where do we look? I know we can talk about having a coach like yourself or whatever, but let's say somebody's on a budget and they don't
Mhm.
have a lot for a coach to get it started initially. What is some steps that they can take?
Yeah, I think podcasts, videos, and Facebook groups are three great sources, or books as well. But you talked about a community. Like I have a Facebook group. It's not huge, but it's highly engaged and high quality. And everybody who's in there is struggling with something and they can post a question and get an answer. So for me, that's just having a place to vent, having a
Okay.
place to unload and say, what do I do, guys? What do I do here? And having somebody that can help. And not all groups are equal, as we know. So you have to find the tribe for you.
So they find the tribe and they're in there with their community. What would be some additional steps? Or maybe let's take the first 2 or 3 steps that they could actually take to start changing their health and getting themselves in a better place.
That's a great question. So I would start with where are you today with your walking? So we mentioned that already.
Yep.
Where are you with your exercise? So formal exercise, whether it's a form of cardio or a form of strength training. And then where are you with your diet? And you have to start from where people are. If people have never done this before, if they're listening, they're totally brand new, we've got to
Mhm.
start small. So I would take your step count and try to add 2,000. 2,000 is a mile. You could do that with one walk a day. I would take your training and say, how can I incorporate resistance training going forward. And that's the one that I don't have a lot of wiggle room. Like, even if you like other forms of training, I feel like every human will benefit from resistance training just because we are mechanical biological creatures that function in the world that way.
Yeah.
2 or 3 days a week, three is ideal, but even two days a week in the gym doing some form of resistance training is going to be important. And that's where it gets a little bit complicated, Ryan, because you're like, what program do I follow? And what do I do? I would recommend checking out Starting Strength. So Starting Strength is a book by Mark Ripito. I have no affiliation, no, I don't make money off of that or anything. It's what helped me. To this day, I could list off 10 different programs, but I would start there, read the book, watch videos. It'll teach you the basics about lifting with barbells. And yes, you can use dumbbells, you can use bands, you can do all that. But if you don't want to waste a lot of time and you want to just get stronger quickly, barbells are super safe and easy compared to the other modes of training. So 3 days a week there. And then diet, I mentioned it before, it can get very complicated, but I would just do some form of tracking and increase your protein. I would just start. Even my own mom has done that. And she's, wow. And at first she had trouble like getting the protein in. And
Mhm.
then she's now not getting hungry. Now I'm actually losing weight. I'm not even trying. I'm like, yeah, it's because of the protein. Like, protein is his magical macro for most people.
It's amazing if you eat the right amount of protein, your body can adjust and then you don't wake up the next day hungry. Like you said earlier, eating pizza, it'll fill you up, bloat you, whatever, but the next day you're going to be starving because your body's, wow, this is crap for you, one, and two, it's not filling. And it's just it the best way I know to describe it is our bodies are machines and why not treat them that way? And it's okay to every so often not put high octane in, but if you continue to beat your body up over and over again, you can't expect your body to say, okay, I'm going to be fine and treat you well.
Yeah, protein is the macro that unlocks a better diet without having to think about specific foods. Because once you go to the grocery store and start to do the macro Tetris of how do I get this protein in, you realize it's mostly whole foods. You're not going to eat much packaged foods to get protein.
No.
And then once you do that, you start to feel better and you have more energy and you're less hungry. And now you start to crave things like fruit or vegetables or potatoes. And by the way, carbs are also amazing and awesome and good for you. And I don't want anybody to think otherwise. Carbs support energy, performance, recovery. It's just we have to disconnect the idea of what we think of as carbs, like donuts, muffins, even pizza, which are really carbs and fat
Yeah.
and highly processed, from just natural carbs, grains and starches and fruits and vegetables. So yeah, then we start thinking of it that way. You can plan your own meals. You can have your own power and have your own menu. Your meal plan will look completely different from the next person, but it will still serve goals.
And it's something you can stick to and be able to live with and still be happy. That's what you've shared today is really broken it down to a very simplified process. It's just we have to get out of our own way and just say, I'm going to do it and going to make it work for me.
Yeah. And don't overreact to anything. Don't Anytime you eat something or choose to eat something, or you go to a party or you're on a trip, right? A social event, dining out. I constantly hear the language like, I can't eat this, or I'm on a diet, so I can't eat this, or oh no, if I eat this will happen. Don't overreact to anything. Just make the choice that you're going to enjoy these things and then do everything else we talked about during the week and you'll be fine. Like, that's just, don't stress about it and you'll be fine.
That's great. That's some good information. As we wrap this up, if people want to join your community or work with you, what is the best where's the best place for them to reach you at?
First, I would just check out my podcast because you'll get a lot of free information all the time about this, Wits and
Okay.
Weights. And then you can find me at witsandweights.com. I've got free downloads, free metabolism assessment, all sorts of great goodies, and you can reach out to me there as well.
Awesome. Sir, thank you for coming on the show, sharing what you're doing, but you really simplified what we could be doing for ourselves to put our bodies in a better position, but also allow us to feel better and live a healthier life.
And I think it should be simple. So I really appreciate the opportunity, Ryan, to come on.
Yeah. Thank you.